Welcome to this meeting of South Ribble Borough Council's Community and External Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Matt Campbell, Chair of the committee, and we'll introduce the rest of the members shortly. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and we will be available on the council's website after the meeting. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. No fire drills are planned, and if the alarm goes off, please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Please turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak and we will bring you in. We are really grateful to our guests for attending tonight's meeting. And we'll now do introductions. So I'm Councillor Matt Campbell, I'm the Chair of the committee and I'm the Ward Councillor for Walton-le-Dale West. If we can start with.
Hello everybody, my name's Lee Jackson. I'm the Ward Member for Earnshaw Bridge.
Thank you. I'm Colin Colton and I'm Councillor for Longton and Hutton West. Thank you.
Councillor David Howarth, Howick Priory in Penwortham.
I'm Keith Martin. I'm the Ward Councillor for Middlefirth in Penwortham.
I'm Ben Story, Democratic Service Officer. Darren Cranshaw, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you, everybody. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Leslie Pritchard and Councillor Joe Hindle-Taylor, and there's nobody available to substitute this evening, unfortunately. Item 2, declarations of interest. I'd like to raise a non-prejudicial interest as my day job, I'm a traffic engineer, and some of the questions may touch on that side of things. Has anybody else got any interest to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on Monday, 20th of January 2025. Members are asked to approve the minutes for signing by the chair. Is everybody happy to approve? Yeah, thank you very much. So item 4, the Community Safety Partnership Update 2025. We're very happy to invite to the meeting Jennifer Mullen, who is Chair of the Safer Chorley and South Ribble Partnership, and Chief Inspector James Neal, who is responsible for policing and safer neighbourhoods across South Ribble, Chorley and West Lancashire. Thank you very much for giving up your time this evening, really appreciate it. Could you please give us a short introduction and introduce yourself? Thank you very much.
Hello, hi, I'm Jennifer Mullen. I'm the Chair of the Community Safety Partnership.
Yes, good afternoon. James Neal, as you've said, I'm Chief Inspector for Chorley, Leyland and West Lancashire, covering problem solving and partnerships.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, go on, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, do you want me to talk through the report? Or yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
fine. Summary, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting us here today. So as you can see in the report, this is an update from the Community Safety Partnership for what we've done last year. So Community Safety Partnership was set up by the Crime and Disorder Act in 1998. So we had to set up a partnership with ourselves, the police, fire and rescue, the probation service and the Integrated Care Board. So the main aim is of reducing crime and disorder, substance misuse and reoffending in the local authority area. So it's a partnership working together to look at problems in the South Ribble area, to come up with some actions and some resolutions to these issues. As you can see from the report, it's working very well. We've got full engagement with the partners, but one of the really good things in South Ribble is we've got engagement from outside the partnership as well, through the voluntary sector and other partners, particularly housing associations who've really engaged with the Community Safety Partnership. So the overall position is very strong for our partnership, working together. And as you can see, we're regularly meeting, the officers are regularly meeting with organised crime as well, that we put on it as an additional meeting to that. So the report goes through the different areas of work that we're involved in. So you've got the integrated offender management. So this is working with offenders to make sure they don't reoffend. So this is a person-centred approach to prevent reoffending. We've got Prevent here that we support, and you can see the different layers of Prevent. You can see the number of cases that open in Lancashire. We don't have any cases in South Ribble on the books at the moment, but part of our job in the council is to make sure that our partners understand their responsibilities and to organise training if needed and necessary. You can see we work with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and you can see the plan there. But more interestingly is the operations that we work on with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the police. So these range from crackdown on organised crime, which is Operation Warrior, Operation Centurion, targeting antisocial behaviour throughout the district, in particular hotspot areas. There's Operation Vulture, which is looking at patrolling to do with shoplifting. Operation Make Safe, which is focused on child exploitation. The Sceptre, which is focusing on knife crime. So we've got quite a number of initiatives to look at knife crime and knife crime bins. You've got Operation Snap on antisocial behaviour driving. And one of the other projects that the team have been running as well is to look at education. So this is with high school children to look at violent crime. We've been organising sessions on to divert young people away, so providing diversionary activities, which we discussed last week. And then there's also a CELS project for people who've got lived experience in prisons to talk to young people about what it's really like if you get sent to prison. So you can also see in the report, we talk about domestic abuse commissioning and what's been commissioned throughout Lancashire to support victims of domestic abuse and all the different funding opportunities that we've had. There is also information about data from South Ribble about domestic abuse and some of the work that we've been doing with coordinators, with the White Ribbon campaign, with the Violence Against Women campaign to do with Ask Angela and working with our licensing team. You can see the work that we're doing on Sanctuary to help people who want to stay in their own home, who are victims of domestic abuse. So you can see the work that we've been doing on that. We also have responsibility for domestic homicide reviews. We've had 4 that we've been working on this year. We're just waiting for one to be published, and one's pending the Home Office review. I've mentioned South Ribble Integrated Team. So again, this is a person-centred focus on individuals who are vulnerable and looking at referrals and working with partner agencies on specific cases to look at some support, particularly through our social prescribing. And then some information about the Violence Reduction Network there. And then finally, there's the crime data. So you can see the data for South Ribble that's specifically being produced for this report. So you can see the levels of crime very stable in South Ribble. You can see the different types of crime. You can see the antisocial behaviour, and when particularly we're concerned about antisocial behaviour, about the times. You can also see the areas that we're concerned about, particularly in Bamber Bridge, where we've been doing quite a few projects there to look at diversionary activities. And the domestic abuse and hate crimes, burglaries and violence against persons, knife crime. So you can see all the data there, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Jennifer. There's a lot going on there, a lot of different projects. First question I've got, a major concern for our communities is the issue of e-bikes and e-scooters. What is the partnership and police doing to tackle this issue, and what more could be done?
Thank you. So, yeah, no, it's absolutely, I think, well, a countrywide issue and certainly a force and a local issue that we have raised regularly, I think. So there's a number of tactics we've got to deal with e-bikes, and sort of the suitability of those depends on the areas and the issues. So I suppose one of the preconceptions we get is that we won't deal with them when they're driving around causing a nuisance. We will. There are tactics to deal with them whilst they're mobile, but obviously there's increased risks to either members of the public if they go faster because they're fleeing us, or the people who are using the bikes if they haven't got the protective equipment. But we will, on a risk-based rating, deal with them when that's happening. The preferred method is to either identify them when they're committing antisocial behaviour, and then, especially if they're local, to visit them at home and deal with them that way. We're looking at a couple of new projects, potentially looking at whether or not we can identify what sort of wattage is going to be illegal to use. Can we identify it when it's stationary, when there's evidence that they've used it to get somewhere, so that we can take it off them whilst they're out in public without having any of the pursuit risks or any of those further. So that's something we've got in development. And we've got a number of operations using our specialist operations and drones as well. So if there's a particular hotspot area where it's happening, especially if it's in an identifiable time, we will flood the area, use drones to identify where they're at. We don't need to pursue because we can follow them ideally home and then deal with them there. So there's a number of ways we can deal with it. The big issue is usually identifying when, where, and when it's happening. It's obviously a lot harder to get those resources there when it's spontaneous, but if certainly the communities are having repeated issues on certain times, let us know and we'll pick them up. Most of our data will either come in from logs or Lancashire Talking, and it's certainly something that we do get through Lancashire Talking, is the sort of road nuisance through e-bikes. We've got a project that we're running in West Lancashire at the moment that I'm hoping to bring over to the other two areas that I've got, Op Propulsion, which is again focused on off-road scramblers and e-bikes, which again is just a multi-agency approach to getting into those hotspot areas and picking them off, and we're getting some good results with those. So.
And I know our partners, Lancashire Fire and Rescue, have been doing a lot of work on safety on e-bikes. There's been some really tragic incidents in Lancashire where people have lost their lives through e-bikes setting fire in people's homes, and they've stored them in their homes. So I know they've been doing quite a lot of media to make sure that people who do buy e-bikes, buy the proper ones, that they're all, they're properly licensed, rather than buying them from different countries when they're unlicensed. So there's quite a lot of partnership working to try and tackle the e-bike issue in South Ribble.
Thanks for that. You mentioned that you've been trying to identify the bikes and then following them home or try to find their address. How effective has that been?
Again, it depends. In some areas, really effective. I know there's some new legislation coming in relation to how many warnings we need to give for antisocial behaviour. So we're watching that with great interest, because at the moment, if it's antisocial rather than an illegal e-bike, we'd have to warn them once, then catch them the second time. So especially when it's local, we do find that if it is persistent ASB, we will get them twice. So it works really well then. Less so if it's people who have travelled in for from another area. And I think that's sort of, like I say, it's definitely got its pros, but there are times it doesn't work as well. But certainly in the areas we find where we have the repeat problems, and it works really well because they're usually local or nearby.
Yeah, what we've been trying to do is identify the individuals, work with them maybe to serve a community protection notice, work with the housing associations as well, because if notices have been served, then the housing associations can serve warning notices on the tenancy, maybe injunctions. So it's working quite closely with the housing associations because sometimes people don't want to listen to us, but when the housing association is involved and they know there's a potential risk of them losing the property, the message does seem to get through. So it has worked in some areas that.
One more from me before I bring over. I know people on around the table have got a lot of issues with this one. But is there anything that South Ribble could be doing to deter e-bikes and motorbikes from accessing our parks and open spaces, such as gates, bollards, just something to deter this antisocial behaviour, which is causing a big problem?
Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of what there is. I know we've explored it quite a lot. We're down to the legality of like spraying the warnings about Section 59 warnings on the pavement, so that that counts as one warning that's not. So I know it's certainly something we've looked at. I suppose the issue with bikes is they're really mobile, aren't they? Really mobile. They're easy to lift over stuff. And in some ways, we can make it harder to respond because we block out the response we put in. Like I say, off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but I do know that each time we do identify a problem, sort of engineering work is something that we'll consider looking at or recommending. So I'm not saying no, but I don't think we've asked for anything and not been given help.
Councillor Howarth.
Thanks, Chair. You seem to be concentrating very much there on antisocial behaviour, but is there anything to tackle simple traffic offences? I mean, if you are 16, you want a moped, it's restricted to 30 miles an hour, you have to do compulsory basic training, you have to be insured, and there has to be a licence plate. Some of these electric bikes are riding legally without causing any antisocial behaviour, but putting pedestrians' lives at risk because of the sheer speed they're going at.
No, absolutely, and we do seize if it requires an MOT or insurance, we will seize it under those powers. They are better than the ASB type powers we've got. Again, I think the big issue is identifying where that's a persistent problem, because then we can have the resources in place to deal with them. The issue we often have, and I don't want to say we don't deal with, we certainly do deal with it as we come across it, but if they don't want to stop, it's a much more difficult proposition. So if it's a persistent problem, let us know, because we can have the resources ahead so that we don't end up with pursuits. We can just stop them and deal with them there and then. So we absolutely will. And if, like I say, if you've got those issues, let us know.
But very quickly come back. If you do want to catch some, just order a hot food takeaway.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome. Just a few quick points rather than sort of asking individual questions. Sort of, obviously, the fire brigade, you mentioned the fire brigade say there's issues with them. So where do you guys store them once you confiscate them? Because they may still be an issue. Obviously, two other methods that we've seen elsewhere is like a plainclothes van that drives around. You know where they are. They'll come past you and you just stop them. There's that, or there's an ID or DNA spray you can spray on that vehicle, which means that in future you can find it. The other one is alluded to by Councillor Howarth is food delivery bikes. We get quite a lot from Preston, and they tend to fly up at the main roads into and some of the footpaths into Preston, and we do have some issues with some coming from Lostock Hall. You know, these are not legal because they're not peddling them, and they're flying around at sort of about 20 odd miles an hour, which breaches the rules there. So I just wonder how that could be tackled, or if that could be looked at.
Yeah, no, for your first question, we don't store them on site either. We store them off site because of the battery issue, which is a genuine risk. So to go through those, well, I'll go backwards. So food deliveries, yeah, that's certainly something we can have a look at. I know Preston are fully aware of it. And like you say, they're potentially coming over from Preston, but yeah, if they're breaking the law or been driven antisocially, we can deal with them. A lot of the stuff, like I say, is about that. Things like you said about the plain vans is knowing where they're going to be, get ahead and waiting. The op propulsion we're doing in West Lancashire involves several different agencies, but plainclothes and drones and things like that, just ahead and waiting. And then as soon as they're off the bikes, I used to be the force incident manager, so I dealt with all the normal pursuits. And the easiest way of dealing with them is to follow them when they don't know that we're there, wait till they get off, and that's when you jump on them, so you don't deal with increased risk to them or the public. So no, we do consider those.
Councillor Jackson.
Hello and welcome. I'd just like to ask, how connected are you finding, the speeding e-bikes and scooters with crime in particular areas?
So, I've not got any statistics, but anecdotally, we definitely do. I know we put a lot of social media posts out recently, essentially saying we've stopped all these bikes, we've done all of this type of things because we're aware that it's causing a lot of distress. And when you reviewed the comments, a lot of them were like, they're just children wanting to have fun. We used to ride our bikes around and have great stuff. So the teams were able to come back, and then the next set of rounds had, and this is the drugs that we found on them when we searched them, and this is the knife that we recovered on them. So I couldn't give you statistics, but there definitely is association in some cases, yeah. But again, it wouldn't need that crime if it's causing other issues for us to deal with it. But
Yeah, Kushkan.
Often with the speeding e-bikes and scooters, there's the masks, and our residents have come to us and said how intimidating that is. So what are your powers to stop them?
So it's a really difficult one, that, because essentially there are no powers to make people remove face coverings. It definitely is in fashion and in vogue, I think, at the moment for young people to wear balaclavas and face masks. We saw it hugely over COVID, and it just doesn't seem to have gone back. We absolutely understand a group of masked people waiting on a corner is unsettling. So we will deal with it, but legally, we are very limited.
Yeah, we have seen a huge increase of that, particularly in hotspot areas that we've got, Bamber Bridge being particularly one. We have got CCTV cameras by the leisure centre, by the park, but they're all masked up and hoods up.
Yeah.
So it's really, really difficult to identify who they are on a camera.
Councillor Colton.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any actual legislation as regard the speed of these vehicles, if you can call them vehicles?
So there is. I think certainly with the e-bikes, a lot of it is the wattage and So they will have, a lot of them are illegal to use on the road. So once we can prove that they have been used on the road, we can take them. It's just identifying them at the time. Like I say, we have quite a lot of seizures of them. It's like I said, I think the ones that frustrate people is you see them whizzing down and you don't really see an outcome for those. But yeah, no, they are. Most of them will be illegal. I can't give you the exact wattage, but yeah, and a lot of them will be breaching that.
So what sort of speed is the actual maximum that these are?
Because they won't be registered for, I was going to say, if they're not registered for the road, it doesn't matter about the speed. If they are registered for the road, then that'll be different. But then if they've got insurance and MOT is usually the way forwards. But I couldn't give you the exact speed that because we wouldn't be we wouldn't be addressing the speeding particularly. It'd be an illegal vehicle being used in an antisocial manner would probably supersede the speed. They can go as slow as they want. If they're still crawling along on an illegal bike, we'll take it off them.
So it's sure the speed that they're going, on a pavement, as like I regularly walk around Avon Park, and the other day the one came past, and it didn't have little piddling wheels. They were like little motorbike tires on this, and it,
Were they pedaling it, or were they pedaling, or was it just purely electronic motor? It'll just be, regardless of the speed, it's going illegal by that. So it's I can look into the speed if you want, but essentially the fact that it's an e-bike being used illegally whilst it's an aggravating factor that they're going incredibly fast, they don't need to break any particular speed limit. No, but fast enough to cause injury if it hits. Yeah, but essentially if it's illegal to be there, the speed will be aggravating if there's any offences, but they don't need to go over a particular speed for us to deal with it.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I just looked it up. It's 15.5 miles an hour, or 25 kilometres. Just out of interest, because you mentioned you seize bikes if they're not insured. Do you know how many you've pulled over that are fully road legal with insurance, tax, MOTs?
No, because we wouldn't record any that were modified. I mean, most of the e-bikes we'll have problems with shouldn't be used on the road, and that's the frustration of, unless you've got some figures, but
the only figures that I have, so with 310 complaints about motor related nuisance, so that could be a lot of things in motor related. So the police analysts have done like a search to see if there's any e-bikes, e-scooters, mopeds, scooter complaints. 20% of motor nuisance is of e-bikes and e-scooters. So probably about 2% of antisocial behaviour is e-scooters generally. So that's the numbers that we've got. So it's 310 for motor related and about 20% of those are e-bike related, I think. That's what the data analyst said.
But we wouldn't record legal stops on that because they'd be fine.
So you've mentioned when a spot's been highlighted to you, like for instance, Withygrove Park, I walk through there with my daughter and my dog. There's elderly people on a nice day, and there's regularly 3 or 4 young lads flying around. Is that an area you're aware of? And is the CCTV is it working there near the skate park?
Yeah, the CCTV is working. It's just finding those individuals. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we are aware of it. It's linked with a number of other ASB things, but yeah, it's definitely on our radar. Yeah, no, so to the point that we've had a dispersal order on Withygrove recently. So yeah, no, we're
right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Nothing else on e-bikes there. Can I bring in Councillor Coulton?
Thank you, Chair. How do you, as a partnership, measure your success or otherwise, and how do you ensure that you're meeting the demands of the Crime and Disorder Act?
I suppose it's a range of measures. So I suppose the proof is the crime statistics is the first one we'd look at. But we'd look at the number of people we've supported through the victims. We'd also look at reoffending rates. We'd also review the number of projects that we've been delivered. So there's quite a number of measures that we use and key performance indicators that we use for the partnership that we measure ourselves on. We do a review every 12 months to see whether what we've achieved in the last 12 months and where we need to target our resources. So there's some report that's been attached as an appendices, and it's the district needs assessment. So there's lots of statistics in there about how they assess it, because it's not just the numbers of crimes, it's the actual effects of crimes. So like a burglary will affect one person. But then, if you have antisocial behaviour, it might affect 10 people, but the seriousness of it is lesser than a burglary. So there's lots of ways and weightings that they do. And that's how we design our action plan based on that. Hopefully the district needs assessment will explain a bit better than I can.
Yeah, and I think essentially we just feed into a large part of that, which is mainly around the crime, the antisocial behaviour, the engagement with communities, and the community satisfaction are the main KPIs we work off.
You didn't mention retail crime. I was not thinking because there's been a lot on TV about on the news quite recently. There was an Asian shopkeeper, saying how much it devastating his life, with all the retail crime.
No, absolutely not. Vulture is our response to retail crime as a force. It is absolutely an issue that we're really aware of. I know nationally there's been a lot of concern that we weren't dealing with it properly. Recently, so the way we've been working it, certainly in South Ribble, is if a shop is subject to shoplifting, that will go through to our immediate response patrols, who will usually attend in the first instance. If there's not an ongoing, so the shoplifter's not still in the area and it gets allocated as a crime for investigation, it'll probably be one of our neighbourhood officers who will go to the scene, get a statement off the victim, get the CCTV, try and identify who the suspect is, because quite a lot of people are repeat offenders and the neighbourhood teams will know them, and then it'll go back to the immediate response team for them to locate and arrest them. And we've had some really good results with that. We find that most of our hotspots for volume is around the national chains. And I know one of the things we're concerned about is all the work we're doing with the national chains, pushing the shoplifting to sole traders and the smaller businesses. It doesn't seem to be that way at the moment. We haven't seen an increase in small businesses being targeted more. The larger shops are. There has been an increase in reporting. There's been a change in policy from the shops themselves, quite large, especially the national chains, who are moving from only reporting the larger scale thefts to now reporting everything. Because I think one of the things that the police as a whole said was, the picture isn't as bad as you're suggesting, and they're saying, well, it is, because we've not told you about how bad it really is. And so there has been an increase in that, but also there's been increased detections, and most of our prolific offenders, certainly in South Ribble and Chorley, have now got criminal behaviour orders against them to prevent them reoffending if they're not in prison. So,
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. In social media, it says how the police don't respond if the value is under 200. Is this quite true in this area?
No. I think there was at one time a sort of a drive to make sure that we weren't responding to things that we couldn't solve. However, no, all burglaries will get a visit. All shopliftings will be investigated. There isn't a cut-off.
Can I refer to page 14, paragraph 12, regarding officers' meetings? Are these strategic decision-making meetings or more operational meetings? And do all members of the partnership attend these, including the voluntary community and faith sector?
So these are generally officer meetings. So they're an officer level. So everybody on the partnership tends to attend regularly, apart from the Integrated Care Board, who will attend as and when necessary if there is specific items. Yes, we do get really good engagement. So again, they wouldn't be regular attenders. We would invite them as and when necessary. Particularly some of the faith groups, if there is particular issues that we need to address. But we do have regular attendance from, as I say, the Housing Association and others.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I think you partly answered this question, but I'm going to ask it. How is the council's cabinet member engaged in the work of the partnership?
So the council's cabinet member isn't on the partnership, but there's updates from the partnership that are given, and the cabinet member can contribute to the partnership. And if they want to be invited, she can be invited, but generally it's an officer level that we have those meetings, so members are not generally there.
Rightio, thank you.
Councillor Howarth.
Which then brings us to the question, how does the partnership engage with ward councillors such as ourselves and our community hubs?
So we have the chairs and vice chairs of a meeting. We did talk about inviting the police officers to hub meetings. I think we'd had a chat about that, you know, if they were available, they're happy to attend. Again, ward councillors would send issues in that I could bring up with the partnership. And I've had quite a few members have brought up issues with e-bikes that have been discussed. Some of the issues with some of the antisocial behaviour, particularly in Bamber Bridge, is also being brought up and discussed in the partnership. So generally, it's fed in through the ward councillors, and there's an open invite to the police to come to the hub meetings.
Councillor Jackson.
I can testify to that at the hub meetings when we've invited police to come. They've been very willing to come, and we've been very grateful. So I'd like to say thank you for that.
Can I refer to page 14, paragraph 12, regarding the partnership's plan? Each year we ask for a copy of the plan and the progress that's been made. Please could you talk us through how the plan is developed, how it is monitored, and also can this be included in next year's report? Thank you.
So the plan is developed, linked in with the strategic needs assessment. So the officers of the Community Safety Partnership will get together to analyse the strategic needs assessment, look at the data that we've been obtained from the police and partners to look at an action plan and develop an action plan. We do normally have an annual member meeting. I don't think that's been planned as yet for this year, where we do presentations and we talk through the plan. We will get that on the agenda, and we will present the report through to members for consultation in that event. So yes, and we can present it next year.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Howarth? No, sorry, I thought you had a supplementary on that one. No problem. Councillor Coulton? Pardon? All right, no problem. Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to refer you to page 15, paragraph 17. What do you think are the reasons why there are no prevent referrals in South Ribble? Is there anything more the partnership can do to educate referring organisations on prevent? I would be very interested in this, being the lead member for training and development, to invite people to come. I'll bring it to the committee to educate us on the prevent initiative.
So I don't necessarily think there's an issue with the lack of referrals. It depends. Lancashire's got different areas which have different referral rates, and I think that's not necessarily an indicative thing that suggests some areas need to be referring more when they aren't. I know all the schools have access to prevent training. Schools are one of the largest areas that refer into us. We've got 2 dedicated prevent officers for the South BCU. And again, we do get referrals. I know I sit on the prevent panel, and it's never been raised that there's an issue that we haven't. So I don't know, unless anybody's got differing views, whether that's an issue or just indicative that there are no cases needing referral, but there have been cases referred through, which sort of suggests the pathways are there. Just that it's not necessary at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, all our own staff have mandatory training on prevent. So we have to undertake the home office training on a regular basis. And we do send that through to partners as well. So we can send the training out. So the training is freely accessible. But yeah, I don't know why we don't get the referrals through. The education is there. The trainings are freely available. But yeah, we don't. I mean, as you say, the biggest referrer is schools, and they have access to the training.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Just on that, the other place I work at, or where I work, we have dedicated email addresses and places like that. So if we see anything on lampposts, on walls and things like that, we photograph it, email it through. Is that something that happens here? And is it something that, because I think some of us are out and about quite a lot. I just wondered if it was something that we could help with in any way.
Yeah, I mean, it is. So we have our officers who work in our neighbourhoods teams all know what to do if they see anything that concerned about stickers, stickering, graffiti. They take a photograph before they clean it. Obviously, they clean it straight away, but they take a photograph beforehand. And if we do have any reports, we've got some, we need to, specifically if it's anything related to that, we do get out within the hour to get the graffiti removed. So, and we do take photographs of it, send it through to the police department that deals with that. So, but if there is members who do see anything like that, take a picture, can send it to our community safety officer who get it to the right department in the police.
Councillor Howarth?
How does the partnership work with the Police and Crime Commissioner? And how does the policing plan link with the partnership's plan?
It's an interesting question in terms of the way it works. Essentially, the police obviously work to the Police and Crime Commissioner's plan. So when the focus is, for example, around our ASB, we can bid to them. I'm trying to think how it fits with the larger plan. I know how we would work, but with yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's generally working on the projects that the Police and Crime Commissioner asks us to work on and support, but also working to do funding as well. So we do funding bids for different projects that we've done in the report. So that's how we try to link in, particularly on violent crime, working with women. Violent crime against women and girls, they've got a particular project. So we tend to work on projects that are led by the Police and Crime Commissioner. We don't tend to, and occasionally they will come to the partnership to do a presentation on particular operations that they want us to be involved in. That's generally how it's been working.
Yeah, it's probably more integrated in the way we work in terms of it very closely aligns with the force priorities, because the force is obviously aligned to the PCC, and then we've got access to the funding. So there isn't a separate sort of governance strategy with it. It just aligns to the priorities, which very much will then align to what locally is causing yourselves issues. And if that's, violence against women and girls, ASB, that type of thing, then we can link in with the appropriate funding streams for projects and things like that for this area.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to page 16, paragraph 20, the figures for Operation Warrior appear to be sort of Lancashire-wide. I just wonder, do we have any figures for the South Ribble side of that?
I haven't got anything additional.
Yeah, is that something you'd be able to provide to Ben or Darren? He can send it round to the committee. Is that okay?
See if I can separate them out, and if I can, I'll.
Just as we mentioned, an operation. Obviously, we have a licensing department here which is responsible for the safety of our community. I think it was last year we had Operation Vertebra, where a number of vehicles were apprehended, I suppose is the word, not being conformative to the needs of the people. I just wonder if that's going to happen again. I know, because it generally vertebrae relates to the M6 and that M6 corridor. So I just wondered, because obviously licensing, we slowly hearing sort of issues around Uber and people like that, and the transferring of vehicles and licenses and things like that, which is a concern, because I mean, obviously our standards are, would we allow our children or our granny to go in that taxi? And so I just wondered if we can move on to, is there plans to sort of try and tackle that, and some of the conditions of the vehicles are obviously a concern because there's different standards.
There is, no, that is something we're aware of. So I don't think it's going to be badged under that same operation name. Where, in fact, I think we've got some funding through Wolverhampton Council, because there's issues in relation to obviously different council. So you don't need to be necessarily licensed in the area that you're operating to have the license. So I think we've secured some funding for a whole South BCU operation to essentially do, just like you said, stopping those vehicles, making sure that they're roadworthy, checking that the people who we think are driving them, and identifying any particular safety issues. So no, we are aware of it, and that's in train at the moment.
And the licensing team work with us regularly as well on operations in licensed premises. So we've been doing lots of work on Ask Angela and safety campaigns through Spike and Drinks with the licensing team as well. So as well as the taxi licensing, we also work with them on other projects too.
And just one more thing around licensing. Obviously, there seems to be quite a rise in scrap collecting. Obviously, they have to be licensed for every borough they collect in or travel through. When we get reports of these, we often get photographs, and we can check the number plates online, and quite a lot of them do not appear to have an MOT or tax. So I was wondering if I mean, I think the only reason you guys might pull them over is normally they have quite a dangerous load or an unsecured load. So I was wondering if there could be a possibility that then they are referred to our licensing team, so we can then take action directly with those drivers for operating in our patch, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not something that I've been aware of recently here. So if that is definitely an issue, but I know we've from my previous neighbourhood experience, not in this area, we did a lot of similar work around scrap metal collecting and appropriate licensing and things. So yeah, if there's issues, we can pick that up.
Can I refer to page 17, paragraph 21? Reference is made to interventions with regards to antisocial behaviour in Bamber Bridge. There have been some activities at Brownage High School over the holidays. I'm just wondering if there's any plans to roll this out in other areas such as Leyland and Penwitham.
Yeah, so we're working with our active health team. We had a scrutiny last week and we discussed this. So we're working with our active health team to look at particular hotspot areas that we can roll out that work to. I mean, it's easier in Bamber Bridge because of the venue that we've got and the work that we do with the schools. So again, it's getting partnership with the schools to allow us to use their facilities. But there's such a lot of activities over the Easter holidays. There's holiday clubs that we're putting on. There's holiday activity funded activities that we're putting on. Our leisure centres as well, putting on activities. So there is a huge amount during the holidays, and this will be happening again in the summer. We're working with Preston North End to do some more diversionary activities. So throughout the district, there should be something for everybody in the Easter holidays, whether it would be ranging from football to dance to yoga to all sorts of different activities for different age groups and different likes and dislikes within young people. But we are trying to see if we can get other venues, not necessarily outside of the holiday breaks, to see if we can do evening activities, particularly in the hotspot areas that we've got.
And do you know how many people attended these activities that were signposted because they've been caught up in antisocial behaviour, or were they just people that would normally attend these sort of activities in the school holidays?
It's really hard to say. I know that some of the community safety team do actually speak to parents, particularly which we've had complaints about individual young people, and we speak to the housing associations about getting the information out in their leaflets to the send to their tenants. But it's really hard for us to say, well, those people have been involved before, but there's a lot of activities going on. So it's a difficult one, that one. It's there and it's open, and we try and promote it as much as we can. But whether those people who are attracted to antisocial behaviour are attending or not, we don't know.
Thanks for that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Page 17, chapter, paragraph 21. Sounds like a book then. Antisocial driving and speeding is obviously quite a concern for communities. And the former chair of the Road Safety Partnership and the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, Andy Pratt, was with us last year. Are the figures quoted Lancashire-wide, or are they South Ribble sort of concentric in any way?
They do appear to be Lancashire-wide. I can have a look for the Bamber Bridge ones. I'm surprised they're not in there. So I think the 118 additional police hours, 14 patrols, they'll be, and 70 stakeholder visits, they'll be South Ribble. Yeah, but the other ones have not. So if there's something.
Is that something you'd be able to provide for us? That narrowed down to South Ribble? Yeah. So would it be the traffic liaison officers that do this sort of work? You know, like the speed guns and the speed awareness sort of stuff?
our specialist operations do a large amount of our enforcement work, but we've also got the Safer Roads Network, and they collect their own data as well. So I'll do some digging to see if it's all collated in one area. It may not be, but at least I can get you an answer one way or the other.
Councillor Martin.
In light of that, then the final part of that question was what can we do to try and reduce this, or can we do more to try and reduce it? I know years ago we had sort of youngsters out with speed guns and making people cry on the side of the road for the embarrassment of being caught by children, and then trying to explain why they're speeding past their playground.
So I think one of the big things we're looking at the moment, and I know I've been particularly driving recently, is making sure that we're back out with the speed guns. So half the neighbourhood team are qualified on them now, so we should be able to resource any of those hotspots. So then it's identifying when and where those issues are again. So there is the speeding concerns portal, which is where all our tasking comes from. So I'll circulate that if that's all right as well afterwards. So if anybody does have those concerns, it goes into a database, and then we receive tasking centrally for us to go out with those cameras, which is probably the best way at the moment that we're addressing it.
Brilliant, thanks for that. So on the cause in Walton Dale, Pemberton, there's a lot of speeding going on. We tried to organise a speed. I think we have to have a training session for using the gun. How long does that take? And could you put us in touch with the right people to get that organised?
I'd have to find out. I've got to say I'm not trained, so I've not done it, but I'll find out.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'll bring in Councillor Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20, paragraph 34, what are the implications of the failed procurement on the domestic violence service?
At the moment, so the Victim Support Service is continuing to deliver it. So at the moment, there's no implications because they've agreed to deliver it. I think it would just be, it'll have to be re-advertised, and they'll have to do another procurement exercise. There isn't any detriment to people in the area because they're continuing. But I think what they wanted to try and do is to look at what were the support offer that they're doing, and they wanted to enhance the offer. But because the procurement failed, again, they've got to go back to the drawing board to see what they can procure. But at the moment, victims are not seeing any difference because it's just continuing with the existing service.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just on sort of that subject, we've got anti-stalking laws and protection orders that can be put in place, and some of these can be done by the police alone, can't they? So especially the anti-stalking ones. So I wonder how progressive is that? Is that something that's actioned or looked at in every case, or anything? Because obviously we have social media now, and that's probably more prevalent than what we see nowadays. So I just wondered whether they would protect the person from the abuser, and whether that can be sort of migrated online, and how would that work if it could work?
So it obviously depends on the situations. In terms of sort of domestic related, there are domestic violence protection orders and notices that we do use. So every time there's an arrest, if that person is released without charge, so they've not been bailed or they've not been charged to go to court, the presumption is that we will look at a domestic violence protection order and then justify why we haven't, as opposed to why it is necessary. So there should be that sort of protection in every case for those. In other cases where there aren't arrests, essentially there isn't that same process, but again, the starting point will be, certainly for domestic violence, where we feel there's an ongoing threat from a suspect at large, will be arrest generally. So yeah, there is that process in place for those orders.
Councillor Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20, paragraph 37, what is the rationale for ending the domestic abuse prevention coordinator post? And what reassurance can you provide that this important issue has the profile and attention that it obviously deserves?
Right. So we'd had the coordinator for, I think, nearly 2 years. And what we'd found was that the majority of work was to do with housing. So the majority of work was to get people who are suffering with the domestic violence out of the home, whether it's to relocate them elsewhere or whether it's to look at sanctuary and providing sanctuary measures. So we really needed somebody who had that housing training to be able to do that role. We'd looked and worked with, obviously, with the community safety team. So we'd split it. So anything to do with housing, that we'd have a specialist housing officer specifically to deal with victims of domestic abuse. And then the other side of the work, which is the promotion of the White Ribbon, the Ask Angela, and all the other side of that promotion work was done by the community safety officers who work for the Community Safety Partnership. So that's how we decided to do it. I think that's a better support because that's where the issues were, and we needed somebody who had that training and qualification to be able to get them the right housing and the right sanctuary that they needed. And we're still doing the campaigns, but it's sort of split between the teams now.
So are there any more resources being put into these two different avenues as you've described?
Yeah, so we got some new burdens funding from the government 2 years ago, and it's carried on. So that new burdens funding is used for both the Community Safety Partnership project, like the White Ribbon, and it was also used to fund the housing officers post. We've also got some funding for community groups as well, if they need some support, if they're dealing with victims of domestic abuse as well. So there is quite a bit of funding about, and that we can target it where necessary.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Could I refer you to page 24, paragraph 57, please? The MADE business intelligence system is mentioned. How does this link in with the Chorley and South Ribble strategic partnerships data dashboard and ward profiles?
So the data from the MADE database would the database that we have, the information is readily available, so we can pass that on. I think one of the officers in the council is working on the data analysis to link the whole systems up. So there's a lot of data sharing protocols that we have to deal with. So we've got a data sharing protocol within the Community Safety Partnership between our members, and we have to now work with sharing that data. So we've started to work with the housing associations as well to see if we can share the data with the team to look at the data analysis. But that hopefully the view of the future would be that the data sharing protocols that we have will allow all the data to be shared and you can access it in one place. That's the vision, and hopefully we'll get there. So we've appointed somebody specifically to do that work in the council. So that's exactly what he's working on now, to see whether the protocols that we've got can be shared for public safety reasons. And that's the vision anyway.
Can I refer to page 24, Lancashire Constabulary data? The information here around the numbers and type of crime. Last year we asked that the future reports include detection rates. Can this be provided to us? Is it something you could send on to us, similar to the other information we've requested? Brilliant. And then I'll move on to Councillor Howarth.
Yeah, on page 25, you've got a table there. The total for miscellaneous crimes against society is quite large. What does this include?
So this has got all sorts in. To be fair, I've listed some of them because, again, going through the table, I was conscious of how much of a proportion that is. But it includes absconding from lawful custody, assisting offenders, prostitution, perverting the course of justice, threats to destroy property, dangerous driving. So it's essentially everything else that's not on there. So it's massive. Looking through it, 40% of those are threats to commit damage. So it's things like phone calls saying I'm going to smash your windows and things like that is a large proportion of that. But then the rest is all your other sort of lower volume offences.
Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. On page 25, paragraph 62, there's another table, and it looks at categories where crime has increased, such as drugs and sexual offences. What steps are being taken to tackle and reduce them?
So, do you want me to start? And so, certainly in terms of drugs, I think I'm going to spin this as a positive, essentially, because it's one of those offences that the more people we find with drugs, the more active we are, the more we find, so the more the offences go up. So I think that relates to a lot of more proactive work resulting in more crimes. We don't crime drugs offences unless we've got a drug that we can test and say this is a drug. So they hopefully should be a positive, although indicative of problems. If we do find areas with a lot of drugs, again, hopefully we're already in there because we're finding them, but then we'll put the additional resources in. I've got a task force whose job is to essentially deal with organised crime and things like this. So they will go into an area, do an intensive piece of work, work with our sort of intelligence side to identify cannabis farms, houses where people are dealing from, cuckooing, things like that, go in and break that up. So that one's I'm quite comfortable around the work we do with drugs. The other one was sexual offences, I think you mentioned. So these get looked at on a weekly basis by myself and my colleagues, and certainly in the detective portfolio. The regular things we do is break down. They cover quite a few offences. So if it's things like indecent exposure, we'll be looking at, are we aware of any offenders who live in the area? Is it escalating behaviour? So essentially they're all monitored to make sure that we're not missing an opportunity to intervene, or if we've got anybody who's sort of a registered sex offender in the area that we need to start targeting to make sure that there's not an ongoing threat. And again, I think, like I said, it would be handy to have the detection rates, because quite a few of these, whilst we have had an increase in those, we've also detected quite a few of them. Was there another crime category as well that you highlighted then? So those two. Yeah. No. So the.
What drugs are you mostly finding?
Cannabis is the by far the largest. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Colton.
Thank you, Chair. On page 25, paragraph 64. What more do you think the partnership and other partners like the council and neighbourhood hubs and whatever do to provide activities for young people, to focus their minds and away from antisocial behaviour?
It's an interesting question, because I know we speak quite regularly, don't we? But one of, like, particularly in Bamber Bridge, the diversionary activities in the play parks and the centre itself is what's being attacked, isn't it? Quite a lot of the time. So there definitely is those diversionary activities in place. I think we're open to ideas, aren't we? But I'm of all the areas I've worked, this is probably one of the most supportive in terms of diversionary activities. So I think the challenge is getting people to take them up. But there is that breadth again of different facilities, which is really nice to see, because quite often people put on diversion activities, but if they're not of the interest for people who they don't get used. But I know you're looking at like boxing and things like that. So
yeah, we are. We're trying to look at activities that may be attractive. So we're looking at boxing. We're looking at other activities. It is really challenging. I think, particularly in particular areas where we've put on diversion activities and parents say there's nothing for the kids to do, and there is such a lot for the kids to do if they wanted to engage in them. It's just whether they want to engage in the activities that are provided. There is generally activities on, particularly in those hotspots of a weekend evening, during the summer holidays, during the Easter holidays, and there's a lot of activities, but it's really hard sometimes to get the people engaged in them, wanting to come and attend. So that's why we're trying diversify the offer, and that's why we're looking at things like boxing to see if that's worked. It did really work. It really helped in Penwitham. There's a really excellent boxing club in Vernon Carris that attracted a lot of young people, and that worked out really well. And if we can replicate that in Bamber Bridge, that's what we're hoping to do. So it's just, again, working with the community to identify any activities that are attractive to young people to attend instead of hanging around and causing antisocial behaviour.
There's been quite a bit on TV about chess. When I was at school, I was part of a chess club. Do schools have chess clubs now, or is it something that could be encouraged?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, my kids' school has chess club, so but I don't know whether that again would be interesting to the children that are causing the antisocial behaviour, particularly in Bamber Bridge. So and that's why we keep looking. So what we are planning to do is some work to have a chat with these children to try and understand. So we're working on a youth engagement project at the moment, so we're probably going to get work with the youth hub to bring it's called a Scran van, but it's basically a van that gives out burgers and hot dogs, which is quite attractive to young people if you're getting fed. And then those youth engagement officers are going to have a chat with them to see what activities they might like to do. Because, I could go and ask them. They're not going to really talk to me, or they're not going to talk to the police. So we get proper youth workers who are engaged and trained. They'll come along with a Scram van and have a chat with them and ask what activities they might like to do in that particular area. And then our active health team and we can talk and look at what activities that we can put on. Have we got trained officers to be able to do that? So hopefully we should get some views from young people. Obviously, again, we've got our youth council that we're talking to, but the people on the youth council are very different to the people who are causing the antisocial behaviour. So that's why we're going to look and get the Scram van in and to see what information we can get out, and hopefully we can try and tailor activities to what they want.
Where is this Crown van?
We're gonna target the hotspots. So the big issue, the big issue for us is Bamber Bridge. So it's going to start in Withy Grove, and then we're going to see where else it's going to be. I think that's where we're going to target our work, because that's where the biggest levels of antisocial behaviour are. And then just hopefully have a bit of a plan of where to really target our resources and what activities we put on.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a supplement. You mentioned youth council. I sort of wondered if there's any thoughts around perhaps some of the individuals you meet that may not appear at youth council or maybe different to the people. Would that be like a sort of group meeting or something that they could perhaps look at how they could help themselves and others at work on that in South Ribble?
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we can do.
Right, that's all the questions from councillors on the committee. Are there any questions from members not on committee? Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. I know that, sorry for being motivated to run. Residents can submit footage themselves from dash cams, but I know there's also a limit of 10 meg on that. And given that most cameras nowadays are high def or 4K, that's a really small file size to issue. Are you aware of that, or?
I've got to say, I'm obviously aware there's a couple of ways we can share them. I didn't know that it was limited, because I know we've tried to remove a lot of the limits. I'll have a look, because like you say, that's not a huge video file.
Thank you. And then just one more question, if that's okay. Would there be any benefit, as councillors, we obviously walk around the streets quite a lot, canvassing and door knocking. And a few people have suggested that we could have a body cam to record the same thing, because we have, when we've been walking down some roads, especially around the wards, we notice a lot of speeding, and there's nothing we can do about it. We see it, but there's nothing. Would a body cam be helpful in that, or would that not be a thing you'd recommend?
Speeding is a slightly different issue because of is it calibrated and can you prove the actual speed it's going? But in terms of social driving and stuff, video evidence absolutely would be accepted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions from members dialing in on Teams? No, there's no members of the public, so no questions from members of the public. Oh, Councillor Smith, we just got you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It just takes a second to find the hand on the screen. And I think my question is, and probably some of the most serious crimes that are on the list, which are gun crimes, and there's this ever-growing knife crime that seems to be around. And it's obviously not just a South Ribble issue, it's a national issue. I know there's a lot of work going on with knife crime, but is there anything going on that we actually don't know about to help this dreadful situation that seems to be around at the moment?
So I think in terms of, I think we've covered most of the large projects. Knife crime is something that we're aware of, like I say, across the force. It's something that we look at on a monthly basis. We review for the whole BCU to identify if there's any repeat locations, if the same people are involved in either carrying knives or using knives, if there's particular areas we're getting. And then that's, again, a task force issue that if we will put them in plain clothes, turning people over. If it's carrying knives, if it's particular people, we'll look at them. We don't have in this area an issue with repeated locations or repeated people carrying knives. There are, most of the knife crimes, looking through them, are possessions, which is concerning, but it's not particularly a pattern that I've seen that I think has caused me to worry that there's a massive issue. But it is something that, again, the task force looks at regularly. It seems almost very similar to, slightly lesser, but like drugs possession, and the fact that it's best dealt with by going to those particular areas where drugs are being dealt, and it's almost like a side result of looking for drugs is that we find the knives that the people who deal them carry, but not a massive issue, whilst we are conscious of the serious nature of it and the fact that there are knives in South Ribble, but it's not a hotspot.
Thank you for that. Darren, can you please formulate any recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from tonight that the committee may wish to recommend. The committee thanks the Chair of the Partnership and Chief Inspector for attending and answering questions. The committee acknowledges the significant amount of work undertaken by the Partnership during the year. The committee asks that the Partnership and police focus more on tackling e-bikes and e-scooters. The committee asks that the Partnership reviews how it engages with the Council's Cabinet Member for Community Safety. The committee requests that future community safety reports include the Partnership's plan and progress made on that plan. The committee is grateful for the offer of a breakdown of Operation Warrior, speed enforcement data and crime detection rates for South Ribble. The committee asks that further information on the Community Speed Watch scheme be provided to all members of the Council. The committee welcomes the reassurance that domestic violence service is not affected as a result of the failed procurement exercise. And finally, the committee suggests that the Partnership engages more with the South Ribble Youth Council on its diversionary and community safety work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. Oh, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Can we add about the licensing issues a bit, like with feeding back to licensing around vehicles? Thank you.
Yep, that's no problem. Thank you very much to Chief Inspector James Neal and Jennifer Mullen for attending and answering our questions. You're free to stick around if you would like to do so. If not, you can escape. So we'll move on to item 5, recommendations update. Members are asked to review the update and remove the items that have been highlighted as complete. This is the first recommendation tracker since the creation of the committee and will be a standing item on future committee agendas. Is everyone happy for the items that are listed to be removed as completed? Is everyone happy for that? Yep, brilliant. Thank you very much. Item 6, committee matters. 6A, Councillor Lou Jackson will be providing an update on the LCC Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee. Thanks, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report from Lancashire County Council Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of March at County Council. There were 2 reports. One, the engagement and co-production. Now, this was a presentation providing an overview of the adult social care approach to engagement and co-production as an enabler for implementing of the Living Better Lives in Lancashire vision, which is a delivery model introduced the 1st of July 2024. A key element of the engagement co-production is listening, speaking, and involving people who use the services. The key priority is to ensure vulnerable adults continue to live independently in the place that they call home. It's important that unpaid carers are able to find support in the local community to help them to remain independent, to minimise the impacts of social isolation, and therefore working with the voluntary section. To improve the ways information and advice is available and linked to improving access to local support. The CQC's assessment framework has 4 thematic areas in relation to local authority care act duties, which references the way the council needs to take action in response to ways we engage, co-produce, deliver care and support to people with disabilities and their carers, reflecting what people have said is important to them in their lived experience and what good support means to them. An example of co-production and engagement is the recently developed IC's dementia strategy being co-produced with carers, carer groups and people with dementia and their families. There's also the autism strategy and the learning disability strategy. Learning again by listening to the people with the lived experience. Second presentation was an oral health update and the report was from the Director of Public Health. It focused mainly on children, and we all know that poor oral health affects a child's ability to eat, sleep and take part in normal activities, leading to time off from school and work for parents. Dental decay being largely a preventable disease. As part of the Best Start in Life approach, child oral care, working with young people and families and partners across Lancashire, has been prioritised to improve oral health outcomes. Inequalities in oral health in England has been highlighted. The local authorities are required to commission health surveys to facilitate assessment and oral health needs. The report of the National Dental Epidemiology Programme compared the differences in dental health between children attending mainstream state-funded schools in England in 2024 from data collected during 2023 to 2024. This data is an important source of the dental indicators in a percentage of 5-year-olds with visual, obvious dental decay. For details, a copy can be provided to you. The data, in short, focuses on local variations of tooth decay in children across Lancashire and district, the extraction index, the amount of plaque debris found in the mouths, dental update and key achievements were also given. So the framework states early years providers must promote good oral health of children attending their setting. Lancashire and South Cumbria is part of a forum for shared learning and best practice for oral health. They are working closely and collaborating with NHS partners to increase dental access. Commissioning for better oral health to ensure universal approach with advice and free toothbrushes and paste provided by health visitors. At this time, the numbers given to the toothbrush packs distributed to babies in the first year is 21,000, and they've been distributed. Commissioning of supervised toothbrushing schemes might help, and in autumn 2023, Let's Get Brushing campaign was initiated. There was also a pilot of community champions in Pendle to deliver oral health messages in priority districts, and to continue to commission infant feeding support. Working closely with child safety, child safeguarding, where oral health and obesity issues could be identified. The health and adult services were asked to support the areas of work identified. After the announcement of the abolishing of the NHS England in last week, 13th of March 2025, the Health Secretary states in order to avoid duplication, and we need one organisation, one centre, not to duplicate the work. This would help to give more power, more freedom and more flexibility to frontline staff, the doctors and nurses. Also, it would help to bring waiting lists down, to reduce waste and increase efficiency for the taxpayers' money. The Integrated Care Board have replied and said at this moment in time, they're assessing what this means for the organisation and will share an update when they have more details, particularly in respect of the National Recovery Support Programme. The LCC itself states after NHS England ceasing to exist, functions returning to the government, such a change will necessitate a considerable change and require a detailed implementation plan. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson, for that detailed report. Very, very much appreciated by the committee. We'll move on to item 6B, meetings and training attended by scrutiny committee members. Members attended any training since the last meeting? No. The annual conference, is it? What day is that?
It's on Thursday.
Thursday, isn't it? Yeah, I was going to attend the annual conference on Thursday, but I'm unable to attend, unfortunately. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jackson, come on.
We did attend the Code of Discipline training. Found that really interesting, and it's current at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, can I just ask, Chair? I mean, Darren might be able to. Is there a sort of obviously we're detached from what we used to have a scrutiny, where the original scrutiny committee used to cover all this as well. So is there a sort of like a detached organisation, scrutiny organisation, that looks at how we do things in this particular and with other councils? And I was just thinking if there's any references or any possible different type of training for the type of scrutiny we do compared to the more corporate stuff.
Thank you, Chair. The Northwest employers tailor training to your needs, and you've had Dr. Steph Snape come for the last few years, and she obviously works with lots of scrutiny committees across the country, and she always brings practice there, but always compares us quite favourably with others. I'm due to attend the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny Annual Conference on Thursday, so I can certainly speak with colleagues, and I'll bring a report back so that members can find out about other councils, but also perhaps some of the learning from that day. The chair of the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee is going to be meeting with Councillor Campbell to look at how this committee works together and to plan the workshop in the summer. So perhaps I'll be able to provide an update after that. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Darren. I'll bring this meeting to an end. Thank you very much to everybody for their attendance. Thank you.